Chapter 4 How to Have Peace of Mind. I saw in the newspaper the story of a man in London whose sight had just been restored. Having been blind from the age of 2 years, he, of course, had not remembered how the world and his fellow men appeared, and in his blindness had formed some very curious notions, one of which was that most people were tall and slender, and that the few who were fat were shaped like bottles. The most striking notion he had formed in his years of sightlessness, however, was that, as he said, I believed all human faces looked peaceful. Surely, what the blind man felt in his heart should be so. We must believe that human faces were meant by the good God to look peaceful. And it's interesting if we apply this to the wider thing of we don't even know of most of what's going on with our body, even that which we can form awareness of. I mean, how often do we track our heart rate and our breath and, some other things that are going on? So our perceptions are always, to a degree, distorted. So that's why it's very important to not try to speculate and fill in the blanks. You can come up with all sorts of stuff that may not be true. One of the most greatly to be desired boons of this life is peace of mind. Who would not like to have utter peace in his heart? It is more to be desired than fine gold or precious jewels or negotiable securities. For if one possesses everything else and has not peace of mind, what does it profit him? Among my acquaintances is an elderly, retired minister of the gospel, upon whom sits the brooding spirit of wisdom. I called to see him one day, and as he sat in his great chair, like some noble old patriarch, he took my hand in his thin and emaciated one. His hair was as white as the driven snow, his face benign and kindly, his eyes, though aged, still lustrous. He said, and I shall never forget it, my boy, I do not pray that you shall have what the world calls success. I do not pray that you shall have worldly possessions, but I do pray that you shall have peace in your mind and heart. So saying, he lifted up his hands in an ancient benediction, his words falling softly and tenderly. The Lord bless thee and keep thee. The Lord make his face to shine upon thee and be gracious unto thee. The Lord lift up his countenance upon thee and give thee peace. No person in the long journey through life escapes the craving for peace and rest, so declared a distinguished journalist. Active as a man may be, eager to press forward in some vital quest, ambitious as he may be for honor or for wealth or for other material rewards, there comes a moment when he would abandon all, if he might, just for a time of utter rest. If we could see into the secret thoughts of great men, if we could lift aside the curtain of their lives and find that which is gripping their minds, we should find often enough the heart-straining wish for peace and rest. Some very famous, rich, beautiful, whatever people need to look at that. They need to look at the soul. So if the mind and the soul aren't, in a good condition, men and women work, strive, aspire, and achieve, and take pride in these things. They gain riches, position, influence, friends, are flattered and applauded for what they do if fortune favors them. You see, it's not those things, it's what you do with them. But to every such one, there comes a time when he pauses for a moment and yields in his mind 2. The temptation to throw everything overboard, to seek out a house in the hills or a cottage by the sea or a hut in some secluded valley, and there to escape utterly from the crowding, pushing, choking mass of affairs which hurries him on through the pathways of life, men fighting their way forward, men standing on the dizzy heights of fame, men struggling to get a foothold and be secure, all have their time of dreaming, and the dreams are dreams of peace, dreams of the silent places, dreams of the softly splashing water down green slopes, dreams of the soft murmur of the sea slipping gently on soft shores of sand, dreams of light whispers amid tall and ancient pine trees, dreams of old grape arbors by a back door, dreams of bending fruit trees in the sweet haze of an Indian summer, dreams of some nymphadic and fragrance of dusty trunks, dreams of haylofts warm beneath a sloping roof, dreams of green meadows dotted with golden cowslips, dreams of the soft parter of raindrops upon the roof, dreams of daisies nodding in rhythms to the pulse of summer, dreams of peace and rest, all of them. Now, dreams are not just, oh, I wish I had that. There's more to dreams than that. It is this that religion does for men. Among its many gifts to humanity is the bestowal of peace. Even the presence of a church has this effect upon us, for there is that in the spire of a church which mutely points us away from the stress and struggle of the crowds, reminding us of a central calm above and within. Now, I understand the biblical reason why not have a spire, and some churches have pointed that out. Because the sharp points and the standing stones, and but then again, why did ancients use the standing stones? Mostly they did that to mark celestial things. So some people ended up worshiping the stars and all that stuff, and but modern Christians usually believe in astrology to some degree. And I don't mean just making up stories with symbolism like I do or something. There is that in the sound of a church bell on a Sunday morning, which is a reassuring note to the voyager in life's storms. There is that in the portal of a church which speaks of peace, telling man that when he steps over that threshold, he is in a sanctuary of rest, a quiet place apart from where the world with its cares is excluded. There is that in the soft swinging notes of the great organ which speaks in the tones of everlasting rest. There is that in the message of forgiveness written down in the book and preached from the pulpit, and the reassurance of God's watchful care spoken in faith that causes confidence and calmness to settle upon man's spirit. One lovely Sunday morning I found myself in the glorious cathedral in Milan, Italy. Surely there is nothing at all in cathedral architecture which surpasses it in exquisite workmanship and in grandeur of conception. As I beheld its great pillars, carrying lofty arches, its massive walls rising to a noble vaulted roof, which retreated into the mystery of shadows, there came to mind the stately words which Emerson speaks of the old gray temples of faith and prayer, mountains of stone uplifted by human love and hope, which nature had adopted into the race and given an equal date with Andes and Ararat. Oh, the Andes. Okay. But it's what you do with the temple, right? And it's the mountains. That thing about Mount Ararat is like, well, the Bible says it's any one of those mountains, so it could be the high hill of Judah. It doesn't make sense for it to be higher than that, really, but that the Noah's Ark washed up on, because the Black Sea, the impact that flooded it, washed some on the high hills, and they would call those mounts. But I rented a little stool from an attendant and leaned back against one of the great pillars and worshipped. Well, sometimes you might need sleep. Don't lean against stuff, and if you can stand other times of the day or night, to do extra. Now, if you need a crutch, whatever, but if you're tired, it depends on why you're doing it. The golden, mellow Italian sunshine was pouring through the exquisite windows, catching up their rich color and failing in glory upon the old stones of the cathedral, worn smooth by the tramping feet of many pilgrims through the years. A shaft of light falling between two pillars revealed a little and very old woman sitting in prayer. She was clad in a simple black dress with a hood of corresponding hue, her hands clasping a prayer book. I learned how to pray holding a prayer book, so, you do what you can do. Were rough with labor and toil. She was bent in an attitude of devotion. While the music from the great organ rounded through the church, she looked up finally, and I saw her face, seamed and wrinkled with age, but bearing upon it that indescribable sense of peace which showed that there she had found what was promised by him who in the long ago said, "Peace I give unto you, not as the world giveth, give I unto you. Let not your heart be troubled." We live in a time of intensified stress and strain. It is manifesting itself physically. This is the era of heart disease, high blood pressure, and nervous breakdowns. And, of course, it's getting worse, right? These afflictions frequently have their origin largely in hectic and frantic minds rather than in physical causes. Well, the modern diet doesn't help, is a huge cause now, and medical experiments and all that stuff. Well, they don't call them medical experiments, but you know what I mean. William Muldoon, the famous athletic trainer, once said, "Men do not die of disease, but of internal combustion." Lack of a peaceful mind also affects a man's poise, making him irritable and creating friction between himself and his associates. Nowadays, the TV and everything else is so loud that most people act like anything peaceful. It's like, well, no, all that treatment you've done to yourself when it starts to get quiet, that's still carrying on its effects. It distorts his judgments, dissipates his creative powers, and subtracts from his life its richest meaning. Where there is no peace, there surely can be no joy in living, and certainly no creative activity. Where then is peace of mind to be found? In nature? Surely this beautiful world is designed to give man peace. Let him go to the mountains, far removed from the confusion of the cities, where the great hills, shrouded in their ever-present mystic haze of blue, shoulder out the sky. Well, the colors of mountains and all that stuff differs, and so does the perception from one angle through stuff, right? Let him climb into the high uplands where the air is crisp and laden with the exhilarating odor of pine. Pine is thought to be the tree of Yule, right? Where the whispering winds make music through great trees, where the deep valleys stretch in pensive quietness between the hills, rock-ribbed and ancient as the sun. There man can drink in, if he will, the peace of God. Let the man seeking peace of mind linger by the sea, watching its curling, foaming breakers surge and fall upon the beach of clean white sand. Through uncounted centuries, the breakers have thus been falling. The roar through all ages has never ceased. It is as if to say, there is plenty of time, there is no hurry, wait, your own will come to you. And too many don't realize what is one's own and what is just what one wants or considers to be one's fair lot or whatever. Let him watch the sunlight falling gently upon the green grass are sifting down onto the black loam of a forest floor in the stillness of a summer afternoon, or let him behold the silvery light of the moon on a white sandy road, or shimmering across water on a starlit night. Let him feel the soft rain falling against his cheek on an April day. Let him warm his bones before a wood fire on a winter night, or lift up his eyes into the stars in a country place where no man-made light hampers his vision of the glorious canopy of the heavens. All of these surpassingly beautiful things, so beautiful that they will bring a choke to the throat, were placed in the world by God to give man peace. But, strangely enough, and sadly enough, one can behold all of these things and love them with a poignant longing and yet not truly find peace. Well, if you know it's a volcano. And why? Obviously, for the reason that peace of mind is to be found only in your own hearts. It cannot be found elsewhere. If the heart is not at peace, there can be no peace. That's why when you do horizons, that you control your breath and the relaxation of your position and all that. You don't just, sit pensively in a chair or something. I mean, if you're disabled and you can't stand, that's different. In a book which was written by men who knew all about human beings is a statement by one of the greatest of them, Hosea. He learned well the secret of peace. He writes it in the indelible ink of human experience. Thou wilt keep him in perfect peace whose mind is stayed on thee. He had often suffered a troubled mind himself, but had discovered that if he kept his mind on God, he would in turn be kept in perfect peace. Is that really true, or is it merely the expression of a wishful desire? We find, first of all, that one whose mind is stayed on God will come to possess presently the imperturbability of God. Sir William Osler once advised all young doctors to be unperturbed at all costs. For how can a doctor who becomes nervous and excited properly handle a case? Now, see, excitement is the opposite of relaxation, so you can have that without, anxiety or something, but, the advice is good for us all. We cannot meet our problems successfully unless we have a calm, undisturbed spirit. What is it that with so many of us destroys peace of mind? Isn't it the little annoyances of every day? People admiringly meet the big troubles of life. Sorrow, tragedy, disappointment, and all the major difficulties strike them, and some deep inner strength comes to their assistance. They are unbroken by the great storms, but the petty annoyances and irritation of daily life will often utterly undermine them. John Burroughs made a wise decision. One resolution I have made and try always to keep is this, to rise above little things, but it is not easy. I know a man who in the business world is a strong, resourceful leader. He meets the problems of a vast commercial enterprise with imperturbable poise. His wife tells me, however, with some asperity, that if his collar buttons in the morning rolls under the bed, as collar buttons have a way of doing, before he rescues it, after perhaps sticking his hand on a fugitive pin and bumping his head on the radiator. Yeah, I gotta be careful, that sort of stuff adds up, right? He flies to pieces and departs for the day with the domestic scene one of considerable turmoil. We allow little annoyances, little criticisms, little gossips, little disturbances to destroy our poise and make our lives miserable. The man whose mind is stayed on God is kept in perfect peace because his mind rises above these insignificant matters. That's why it's important to leave the home, because the home's too cramped. Another reason why we shall find perfect peace by keeping our mind on God is that in a remarkable way, faith in Him, in His goodness, and His constant care removes fear from our hearts. When I was a very little boy, walking through crowded city streets with confusion and clamorous noise all about, with hundreds of people passing whom I did not know, I became frightened. Then I would put my hand in my father's hand and look up into his face. He would smile down at me reassuringly, and I was no longer afraid. I knew everything would be all right, for my father was big and strong, and he loved me, and that was enough. The situation fundamentally is no different when we become adults and find ourselves in the midst of a dark and confused world. Put your hand into the hand of the Father. Look up, and by the long vision of faith, see His smile. He is big and strong, and He loves you and will take care of you. The person who learns to keep his mind stayed on God also has that factor essential to peace of mind. A faithful friend to whom he may unreservedly open his heart. There is in us all a deep-seated necessity which requires the opportunity to freely pour out our hearts upon occasion, well, hopefully occasions, but it is of unquestionable value to talk over the deep matters of one's life with another, an understanding person. It makes them clearer than merely to reflect upon them within one's own mind. Themistocles told us that speech is like the cloth of Arras, opened and spread abroad, whereby the imagery doth appear, or as in thought it lies, but as in packs. When we take out our burdens and problems and lay them open for a sympathetic friend to examine with us, their outline and form and imagery appear more clearly to ourselves, and the dark things which disturb us are lost in a sense of newfound peace. As students, we were advised by our wise professor that the study of philosophy would be clearer to us if we talked it over among ourselves instead of trying to think it through individually. Well, you still do that to a degree, but there is a benefit to conservative thought, right? This we did, and while doubtless our conversations were far from illuminating philosophically, this practice at least helped us to orient our own problems. There are some things, however, in which even a trusted human friend cannot be a satisfactory repository for our confidences. In such cases, men discover that only God can satisfy their need. It is for this reason that some old men and old women, like those painted by Rembrandt, have in their faces ineffable peace. For long years, they had known that by keeping their minds on God as the intimate companion of their life journey, they entered into an inner quietness. A woman came to my study one day who obviously was not one of the devout members of the flock. She swept in impetuously, trailed by the confused aroma of perfume, tobacco, and liquor. She was considerably decorated facially. With a jaunty, even flippant manner, she said, "Imagine me in the study of a minister. My friends would all laugh if they could see me here." I did not say so, but the thought crossed my mind that my friends too might laugh if they could see her there. She inquired in a businesslike manner how much time I had at my disposal, to which I replied, 30 minutes. She then outlined the interview by saying that she would tell me what her troubles were, and that when she had finished, I would diagnose and prescribe. She explained that she had no contract with the church since girlhood, but that now, under the stress of great trouble, she felt that a minister perhaps could help her. And, part of the reason modern psychology is the separation of that from, the religion, and maybe it's not available as part of the religion, dream interpretation and all that. Used to be able to go to a masjid at the dawn, and after the dawn prayer, you could, get your dream interpreted. For example, she had conversed, she said, with one or two close friends, but had gained no satisfaction. She proceeded therewith to talk in a steady stream for 30 minutes. Then, with a glance at the clock and a mumbled apology, she noticed. She arose, saying her time was up and she must go. I noticed that the sense of strain and haunting nervousness which had characterized her when she entered the room seemed to have departed, and with a most attractive smile she put out her hand and said brightly, "Thank you so much, you have helped me a great deal," and she was gone. Now, in the Bible, you don't touch a woman at all that's, neither your spouse nor your family, so you don't put out your hand, you don't hug them, that sort of stuff. And there's no other opinion, from the Bible. She left me scratching my head and asking myself what I had done for her. Sometimes these people just need to listen or something, because obviously the person had problems with drugs and promiscuity, or at least displaying herself or something. For I had scarcely been able to get a word in edgewise. Then it occurred to me that she did not want advice or need it, that she did not require to have her case diagnosed or a prescription given, but that what she needed was a sympathetic listener whom she could trust and to whose shoulders she could shift her own load. She departed, having, in a sense, rested her burdens upon one whom she considered a representative of God, and by that means upon God himself. Now, see, every bit of things count. It's like, they're not fully the path. Why do we? It's like, well, are they part of your path? Then be with them upon that, right? It's not the phrase, but you know what I mean. Support them with that. This woman was following as best she could an instinctive realization that only from God could she find a sense of unity for her distracted mind. I wished afterward I might have been quick enough to tell her that if she would keep her mind on God, she would never again find herself so deeply in confusion. This other thing must be said too. Men have distressed minds, devoid of peace, because of the wrong they do. It is a terrible, almost an impossible thing to carry around in one's mind a sense of guilt. Men in a moment of weakness do a wrong thing, and their lives ever afterward may be fundamentally unhappy because of the haunting memory of an unforgiven misdeed. A sin in the mind acts much like a wound in the body. A clean wound will heal quickly and completely, but an unclean wound will not heal quickly, or, for that matter, at all, until it is cleaned. Sorrow is a clean wound. It hurts terribly, and the cut may be deep, but there is no infection in it, and nature binds it up. Sin is an unclean wound. Well, sin meaning mistake. Some people, it went through the German or something. It's like, well, it's so close to the ancient Egyptian S and N. It too cuts deeply. Santayana, in the Last Puritan, tells us that the man who gives a wrong twist to your mind meddles with you just as surely as a man who hits you in the eye. The hurt is not so sharp, but the effect is longer lasting. Sin, having wounded you, sets up an infection, which, unless eliminated from your mind, will poison your entire life. It will reach the nerves and make them jumpy. It will touch the heart and accelerate its action. It will penetrate to the stomach and upset your digestion. It will get into your organs of taste and take away the delight of your food. It will haunt your mind and disturb your sleep. In short, it will completely deprive you of peace. There is only one cure for it. A man called to see me one Monday morning. He was a gentleman of evident culture, and I take it, of wealth and social standing in his community. He said he had come to the city to consummate a business deal, the most important of his career. He told me that for some time he had found it difficult to consolidate his powers of concentration, and that now, when he needed these powers of concentration most, he found himself peculiarly ineffective. Well, I say them because, not sure. Anyways, he complained of growing nervousness and unhappiness. I asked him if he had prayed about the matter. He said that he had attempted to do so, but that his prayers were unsuccessful and that he could not get near to God. He informed me that in his desperation he had attended our church the night before, and knowing no one else to whom he might turn, had sought my counsel as a clergyman. I have at times a peculiar sense that at such an interview the two of us were not alone, that a third person was present, guiding and directing the conversation. Now, where two meet in my name, a third will be, and that's, I will be the third, or perhaps the reference to the third, right? But there's spiritual beings everywhere. I had such an impression on this occasion, for inadvertently I acted with a wisdom which I would not otherwise have enjoyed. I asked him if he would talk to me about his life, and we discussed many things in an attempt on my part to ferret out the thing that was disturbing him. Obviously, it was something deep in his mind. In this case, it did not have to be drawn up from subconscious depths, but it was a deep wound. I said to him quietly, "Have you done anything morally wrong?" He flushed and was embarrassed, but said, "Yes, I have." I asked him if he would tell me about it. He replied that he had never told anybody about it. I counseled, perhaps that is the thing that is stopping the flow of normal power through your mind. He started to tell the story, haltingly, hesitatingly at first, but as he began to unload it, spoke with a torrential rush of words. It was a cathartic of the mind and soul, full and complete, and the old, dark, hard, unlovely things gushed out of a mind where they had become congealed and had effectively checked the passage of personal power. When he had completed his story, and the last word had died away, there appeared on his face a look of deep relief and brisk, incisive, decisive businessman that he was. He said, "You have found it. That is the solution of the matter." Of course, I had him dedicate himself in prayer to God, seek and receive forgiveness, and as he departed, I knew that he went out a new man. Since then, he has not forgotten the secret, but has kept his mind stayed on God and God's way of living, and has never forgotten that he is God's man, whom God saved from a broken life. He now has peace, and I do not believe he will ever lose it. And